to the Thursday, May 9th edition of the Clemson Dubcast. No podcast last week, and I am so sorry. Had some family stuff going on, and man, I missed you. I missed the podcast. My week is not the same when we don't get to do this. But hoping to make up for it next week by having two editions of the Dubcast. We will keep you posted on that. Plenty of recruiting information at TigerIllustrated.com going on right now. Wow, what a time to be a fan of Clemson football and a time to be a consumer of Clemson football recruiting information. Paul Strelo right now has something up on the site dealing with the coaches sort of turning their attention to the 2021 cycle. Some good info there. I'll have a column up later today on Dabo's victory parade, I guess you could say, across the country with two of his sons, and how that further sort of distinguishes him and his personality and his sort of the way he runs his program and runs his life distinguishes him from Nick Saban. Not that Alabama's having a whole lot of trouble recruiting right now, but again, that's one of the advantages right now that I think Dabo Swinney has as he tries to accentuate the belief and even the fact that Clemson is just different in a lot of ways. Want to give a special shout out to the title sponsor of the Clemson Dubcast. Since all the way back in the beginning, way back in August of 2018, Parham Smith and Archenhold Law Firm, downtown Greenville. Blake Smith, he's been a good friend of mine for years, dating to the days when he taught a law class at Clemson with some guy named Terry Don Phillips. Back in this past July when I was sort of mulling over whether to do a podcast or not, just sort of tossing around the idea, thinking about possible sponsors, Blake and Brooke Archenhold were so enthusiastic to jump on board. So happy to have them with us then, and the same is true now. The forte of their firm, which is at 15 Washington Park in Greenville, is medical negligence. They represent patients and their families in medical negligence actions. They also handle all sorts of other personal injury litigation, free consultations at Parham Smith and Archenhold Law Firm. So give them a call at 864-990-4581 or go to parhamlaw.com. That's PARHAM law.com. If you're a business owner in Clemson, Greenville, South Carolina, the Southeast, anywhere, you probably want to hear about Tandem Payment and what they have to offer. If your business accepts credit cards, you probably need to see what these guys are all about. Tandem Payment, based right here in the upstate, changing the face of payment processing, quickly becoming the most cost-effective solution for all small businesses. Tandem's program, which is based on applying a small customer service charge to each transaction, ends up saving your business up to 90% of previous processing charges. One of the owners of Tandem is a 2005 Clemson grad. Instead of entrusting the majority of your hard-earned money to someone over the phone, you can meet face-to-face with the Tandem representatives and their consultative approach. So give them a call at 864-672-1570 or online at tandempayment.com. All right, let's get to our interview with Eric Mac Lain. We did this over the phone earlier today. With a lot of our guests, however, when we can, when both of our schedules match up, we meet over at the Abernathy Boutique Hotel, little conference room over to the side of the lobby there. The routine consists of us going over to Taps Bar and Cafe before the interview begins and getting a refreshment. I normally get a pint of the Hugie Street IPA, and then we retire to the conference room for our conversation. But really nice atmosphere over at Taps Bar and Cafe inside the Abernathy. Laid back, casual, perfect spot for you university professors and employees to go unwind after a day of work. They have some special event plans for football season, so looking forward to hearing more about that. Check them out online at theabernathy.com. All right, here we go. Eric Mac Lain. Enjoy. All right, joined by Eric Mac Lain. How you doing, man?
Just doing great, brother. Proud to be here. Happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Yes. Boy, big news during the spring game. You're going to be joining the ACC Network in a studio role. Is that right?
That is correct. And super humbled and blessed, man, is the words that I keep using over and over again to describe this. Just such a cool opportunity that really not took me by surprise, but kind of came out of nowhere, and truly honored to be selected by ESPN and the ACC Network to be a part of their team.
All right. I know that after the spring game, you held a little mini press conference, and you shared the story about how this came about. Can you maybe retell it, because it's pretty cool? You're in San Jose, right?
Yeah, I was out in California, Santa Clara, San Francisco, wherever, one of those sands. We were all over the place.
wherever you were, as Dabo Swinney said.
Everything was so spread out. We were all over the place, but got a text, saying, "Hey, this is so and so from ESPN. Would love to catch up with you if you're out here." And, just being a former player, a lot of people, and speaking to the media as much as I did in my career, a lot of people were just interested in my insight of the game or what I thought would happen or my thoughts of the game. Just because you have a little bit different perspective when you're a player other than, maybe a fan or a media guy who just hears and talks about it all the time. So it was fun to relate to these different people and discuss with these other people. But so I was kind of blowing this guy off. I was like, yeah, I'm out here, but I'm kind of busy and, doing my own thing. And we tried to connect a couple of different times. And I was in San Francisco one time, and we were over visiting Pebble Beach a little bit one time. So it was just funny how all of this almost didn't happen, because I think this is just another interview for my thoughts of the game. So finally we get together on game day, and, we walk up to each other. He had previously told me that they were about to be on TV. So I'm thinking again, maybe it's with SEC Nation or Network or some small gig with ESPN, because I Googled the name and I couldn't find this guy anywhere. So we meet up. He's literally in khakis and a polo. So I'm like, there's no way this guy was just on television. He wouldn't be dressed this way. So a red flag kind of flew up then. And he's asking me about the game. He's not taking notes or anything. We're just talking about what I think is going to happen. And then really out of nowhere, towards the end of the conversation, he goes, there's going to be some new opportunity with ESPN and the ACC Network coming. I'd love to fly you up to Bristol and see if you'd like to be a part of this team. And I totally blacked out. I had no clue that it was coming. I had no clue who he was or what he was looking for. But, and I just said, yes, like, let's go now. I don't even have to watch this game. I know it's going to happen. And so just like a kid in a candy shop, man, when I went up there and got to see all the sites and see ESPN. I mean, I've never been up there before. Just a total crazy story on how it all happened.
So at what point after that, how soon was it that you went to Bristol?
So probably about 3 weeks after we had won the national championship, I flew up there, did a little audition, where they're seeing and evaluating, different aspects of me discussing sports and calling a game and doing a little studio here and there. And then probably after that, it was probably another couple of weeks or so until I got the call. So it's funny, after you do and you're like, okay, I think I did good, but I'm not sure. And you don't hear back. You're like, oh man, this is just killing me to know. But I'm sure other people had to wait much longer and had much worse situations than what I was dealing with. But it was really cool to be able to experience that.
Can you paint the picture of what those auditions were like? Like, where are you sitting behind a desk? Are you watching a game on a big screen TV? What was that like specifically? Yeah,
so the studio part was literally like a real show. We're on a set. Obviously, it wasn't live, but we're on a real set. And we're going over the topics that were given to me and discussed. And that was the national championship, kind of what the ACC is going to look like next year. A couple of different key players that I thought were going to do well. And Matt Berry was actually my guy who was doing it all with me. So he was the one asking questions and going on and so forth. But it was a really fun time. Matt was super bought into the process. So really thankful for him. I mean, he could have been a total jerk and acted like he had better things to do, but he was all into the process and the audition process. And it was really fun to be a part of with him.
Did they give you time to prepare for the subject matter, or was it just totally spontaneous?
Yeah, it was a couple of days before he kind of sent me, here's what we'll be looking at, here's what we'll be talking about. But I think it was very vague on purpose, just so they could see not only my preparation, but what I actually already maybe knew off the cuff. So they were very strategic, I think, with the way that they did things.
You've been in front of the media a lot and very comfortable for obviously several years. You were at Clemson, but were you nervous when you're going through these auditions?
I was on the plane, and it was weird because I've played in the national championship. I've spoken at press conferences. I've introduced various people, so in obviously much larger crowds than what I was about to be doing. And sitting on the plane, I was just not psyching myself out, but I was just, I don't know, I got nervous. And then I kind of we landed, and I was like, man, I'm going up here to just talk. That's all it is at the end of the day, and talk about something I'm very passionate about. So I quickly tried to get rid of those butterflies, that nervousness. And by the time I walked in the doors at ESPN, I was fine, calm, cool, and collect. But it was funny that, I hadn't felt that feeling in quite a long time, maybe to my early days playing. So it was interesting for those to come back up.
You just said, I've introduced people. I'm guessing you're alluding to introducing the Vice President of the United States.
He's one of them. I've introduced Dabo once. I've introduced President Clements, but yeah, the VP was definitely the biggest.
What was that like? Were you nervous for that?
No, I wasn't, because really I was reading. I had to submit a speech. I had to get it cleared by the Secret Service and their PR people. So really it was just telling a story that I had already written. So that was an easy one. And Biden was fantastic. He played along with my joke, and obviously he was delivering on a very important "It's on Us" campaign. But I wasn't too nervous for that one either. For whatever reason, man, I can talk decently. I can talk decently well. I think it's just, the background and being raised in a military family. You had to talk. You had to get your words out if you wanted to speak around my house. So I learned quick.
So, all right, you have been with JMI Sports, which is Clemson's multimedia rights holder, for how long?
2 years. 2 years this past April. So 2 years and some change. And
you are, I guess, an account executive working on multimedia sponsorship rights for Clemson Athletics?
Yes, sir.
All right. What in just for the layman, for the average person, what does that mean?
Yeah. So we go out for Clemson. So we aren't Clemson. We like to associate ourselves, kind of handle situations as if we were, just to represent Clemson in the absolute way that they're supposed to be represented. But so we are not Clemson employees. We're JMI Sports employees. We are known as, or do business as, Clemson Sports and Campus Marketing. So we go out to the Michelins, the Founders, the Wells Fargos, and create these corporate sponsorship and partnerships for the university on the athletic side, which has been done for many, many years, and the campus side, which is really brand new. And there's only a couple of schools in the country as of now, or a couple of years ago, that did that. So it's been a really fun, different perspective, kind of even more behind the scenes than when I was a GA. I'm working with the university to accomplish goals of obviously bringing in money. Revenue is a very important thing for an athletic department in a university. So it's been an unbelievable experience. Just the relationships that I've been able to make with all the way down to janitors to CEOs of these giant companies with GE or Ally Financial and Wells Fargo. Just really fun relationships that I've been able to build while serving my university still. Was really, really cool, and I was very thankful for this opportunity.
And that's basically what it is relationship building, right?
That's what life is, but yeah, this one more importantly, definitely.
All right, so the process that, like as you said, the sort of new and fairly unique process of naming rights and things like that on the university side, is it basically, you get company A, corporation A, and say, hey, we could put your name on this building over here? Is that essentially what it is? That's a very small but large part of what we do. So obviously when anytime you're talking about naming rights, that's a multi-million-dollar annual investment type deal that we would
work hand in hand with the university. Not just one or two people are involved. A lot of people are involved when something like that happens. But think more so of really just day to day things like orientation or welcome week, or literally just having a table and being able to legally come onto campus and either advertise a product or give away free stuff to further increase your brand with students. So really campus it's a blank canvas that each and every day we're trying to create new opportunity, not only for Clemson University, but the students as well. Other than just, think of your typical billboard. We want to think of holistic partnerships, total campus marketing that can cover a lot of bases and create these valuable, meaningful partnerships. So
on game days, the past 2 seasons, I'm guessing you're just not sitting there watching the game like a fan. Those are big opportunities for someone in your position. Can you tell me what your game days are like?
Yeah, absolutely. And really, maybe a shock is the wrong word, but not being able to sit down and watch my Tigers play, because I had the great privilege of doing that in 2016 when we had that fantastic year. Because I was a GA, I had no responsibility. So, going from a guy who played half the game, obviously on offense, was able to watch the game, to a fan to where I watched the whole thing, to now I'm working the game where I'm having to entertain, go around, make sure operationally things are working the way they're supposed to, meeting with new people. I think of 2017 when we played Auburn and had all those sacks, that crazy game. I didn't even see it until later that night when I watched it on replay. It's such a complex thing. And as an account executive, it's a little bit different because mainly your job is to host and to go out and meet different people. But there's a very fine line because you don't want to be talking someone's ear off who is there to enjoy and experience the game. So we try to have helping hands any way we can, whether it's cleaning up a hospitality area, helping with some radio or broadcasts here and there. It's a wild day that normally starts before the sun goes up or comes up, and it ends right about when sun's setting. So it's a full day of work, and we have an excellent team here at JMI Sports that has done a fantastic job these past 2 years. It's been a real privilege to work with these guys and girls.
So during the game itself, are you bouncing around or are you in one location generally?
Yeah, it really just depends on who you have there. What are your goals for that game? There'll be certain games where I'm up in our suite literally the whole time, just making sure everyone has the refreshments they need, the food that they need. If there's any trash, I'm helping picking that up. And then again, those small chatty conversations where, maybe I'm getting some business done. Maybe we're just helping them have the best fan experience that they can. Or there might be other games where I'm literally running around the stadium, making sure people are in the right spots. They're doing what they need to. They're having a good time. They found their tickets, their seats. Or if we have anything going on the field, normally we're there making sure that goes smoothly as well, working hand in hand with Mike Money and his marketing crew internally. So it really just depends on what you have going on. And who's there for you. Obviously, some games are bigger than others, and we all know probably what games those are when people are coming. But it's a fun experience, and it's hard to explain all the minute details until you actually are doing it.
So you're making extensive use of your DVR, I guess, watching these games back.
Exactly. Absolutely.
And I should know this, but are you going to continue to work for JMI even when this ACC Network gig starts?
I will not be. So we will sadly have to move on from these guys, but they've been super supportive and have really been with me step by step throughout this entire process, just knowing that this was something that I was passionate about and something that, I kind of always saw myself doing. So once the opportunity arose, they were very supportive of that.
And when does this transition happen?
Probably midsummer. We haven't had a concrete date yet, just because things with the ACC Network probably won't pick up until later in July when you think of a recording standpoint or having to be on air for anything, which won't be till August, live at least. So we're kind of taking it by ear and living day by day, but I think midsummer is going to be when that officially happens.
Are you going to have to move?
We don't think so. We think we get to stay. As long as I'm near airport, it sounds like we're okay. So luckily having GSP right here is a great airport for us.
Oh, okay. So you're going to be going to Bristol quite a bit?
I will. So basically what it's looking like is Friday through Sunday or obviously late Saturday night, I will be in Bristol for football season.
On air stuff, Saturday night?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I was thinking for some reason a lot of this would be in Charlotte, since I guess that's where the ACC Network is headquartered, but that's not the case.
Yeah, I thought that as well, and I'm not sure why it's in Bristol. Obviously, I know they have a fantastic, kind of built out set up in Bristol, but I thought something would be similar in Charlotte. But as of now, everything that you see on air, or primarily everything you see on air, is going to be coming out of Bristol.
And you said this is something that you had sort of thought you wanted to do for a while. Can you take me? Is this something you thought of during your playing days? That hey, I'm really comfortable around the media, so this is something I could do for a living.
Yeah, I think naturally that evolution kind of took place, right? I think when you look back to maybe my sophomore or junior year when Tim Beret so graciously started introducing me to you guys and spending some more camera time in front of you guys, obviously as you play more and more opportunity will arise from the media perspective. But just something that, I would sit down and say, man, I could maybe get paid to do this one day. I could talk about football or basketball or baseball or all these great sports and maybe have an opportunity to do this professionally. So I think it's always something that I've kept my mind on. I've done a ton of radio stuff, was very fortunate to host the Fifth Quarter show last year with William Quackenbush. That was on airways across the state and into Charlotte and Atlanta. So to be able to host your own show is very cool. And then it just kind of segues to on TV and live TV things. So it's something that maybe growing up my whole life, it's not, man, I want to be a broadcaster. I want to be an analyst. But as natural evolution kind of took its place in college, it's definitely something that kind of opened my eyes to a new opportunity, or at least to be cognizant of it being an opportunity. Your
top two favorite analysts, college football analysts, and why?
Probably number one, Marty Smith. I think that he's just a fun guy, a down-to-earth guy that America has seemingly, and maybe the world, has seemingly just been able to really relate to. I think that he's just a good old boy, a blue-collar guy that's worked for everything that he's gotten. And I know his tight pants and his funny hairdo to some might be comical or things that they pick at him about. But at the end of the day, I think Marty Smith is such a real-life character that just the interactions that I've had with him in person, whether we're on camera or if we're just meeting up in Charlotte somewhere, have just been very authentic and something that I gravitate to very closely. And then obviously I think Herbie is an easy answer just because of the amount of times that I've seen him, met him, had the great privilege to meet him a lot. And he cares about the development and where the sport is going, but also as a broadcasting. He pulled me aside during the spring game or before the spring game and was just very complimentary, was very excited, because we did do a lot of things together and segments together my senior year, just to meet those guys. And Fowler is right there with him as well. I think that he's somebody who obviously it was huge in college football, but now we see him all over the place and all the things that he's been able to do with different sports and really broaden his reach. I actually called Chris Fowler before my audition, and he was down in Australia, covering the tennis tournament down there. So just the things that he's been able to do through sports is something that I really aspire to mimic the best that I can.
Let's rewind a long way back to 2010. Your recruitment. Some people listening might not believe this, but back in 2010, 10-win seasons were not a birthright for Clemson football. Who else was involved in your recruiting, and what was it that ultimately steered you to Clemson and made the difference in your eyes?
Yeah, I think, well, first and foremost, Dan Brooks was really the cause for all of this. He was at the University of Tennessee when I was committed there. He was my recruiter there. He's my recruiter at Clemson. I've known him since I was in the 6th grade, just from going to Tennessee camps my whole life, growing up a volunteer. So when they all got fired, he came to Tennessee, he left Tennessee and came to Clemson. He's really the only reason that I even came to see Clemson ever. And really the only reason we came was to see him, because I hadn't seen him in a couple of months or maybe even close to a year since he was, that staff was fired. And it was different. I'd been everywhere. I'd been to Alabama, Ohio State, Tennessee again with Derek Dooley and, that whole new staff, Duke, Auburn. Had visited really a ton of places and seen all that I could, and was really actually high on Auburn. I love the campus, love Gene Chizik and Gus Malzahn. They had a quarterback who no one knew about yet, named Cam Newton, who was an absolute killer and was bigger than me. So as a tight end, when you meet a quarterback who's taller than you, that's kind of weird. So just seeing what they had going on, I really wanted to be a part of that. And literally we're on the way home from Auburn. We're on 85 going to Fayetteville, North Carolina. And we get a call from Dan Brooks. And he just says, "Hey, I heard you were at Auburn. I know you got to drive right by here to go back home. Why don't you just come by? It'd be great to see you." And so I kind of look around the car like, how the heck did he know we were there? But the recruiting world, I mean, it's like wildfire. Everybody knows everything. And so we type it into the GPS, man, and we were 30 minutes away from campus. So I think we were at like exit, like 5 in South Carolina, and obviously 19B is the one you take to come to Clemson. So we did it. We pull off 85 and we start, and I'm doing some research. So I literally, and this, people have heard me say this before, but maybe you know this, maybe you don't. I had no clue where Clemson was. I'd never have heard of them. I didn't know who Dabo Swinney was. I was going to the SEC no matter what. That's kind of my stigma. And when Dan told me that he was at Clemson and he was in the ACC, I said, man, there is no chance that I'm going there. And it's funny how all this comes full circle, and now I'm going to be an ACC Network analyst. But there was no way I was going there. So we're doing some research in the car. I've got this 30-minute drive. I find out their colors are orange and purple. I find out they're the Tigers. They have this tiger paw, which is so funny to say now. I mean, there's not a recruit in the country that doesn't know who the Clemson Tigers are. Mm-hmm. But you go back to 2010, 2009, I mean, I had no clue. I really didn't. And saw that they had some fresh off of being a wide receiver coach, head coach who had no clue what he was doing, way in over his head and probably going to be fired. So it's funny that I came there to see Dan Brooks. We pull off of 85, man. I start seeing these tiger paws on 76. The sun setting, it's purple and orange. I mean, totally perfect situation for what was happening. And, most colleges you go to outside of Auburn, these bigger city colleges, if you think Columbia, Alabama, Ohio State, their stadiums are surrounded by parking lots. They're kind of off the highway, not really close to campus or kind of far away from where academic buildings are. And Clemson's, as we all know, is smack dead in the middle. I mean, it's a part of everything. So we're pulling off, we're getting on Perimeter Road, and I'm looking at the GPS, and it says we're 2 minutes away. I'm like, we just passed a cow pasture. How are we about to be coming up on a university? This is quick, because I'd never seen anything like Clemson. And so we're coming around Perimeter, man, and it's sunset, and then, those trees right there, and the stadium just rips out. And I'm getting goosebumps talking about it right now. But to see that and how different just that was, already caught our attention. So we're like, man, this is outstanding. This is a beautiful place. I like the small town feel. And then we actually got there and got to speak to people and met Dabo Swinney and felt the energy and the culture and everything that he had in store for this great university. That we planned on being there for maybe 30 minutes. We ended up staying 4 days, and it was just fantastic. We met with every single person that I could have met with on campus, from a support standpoint, with Vickery Hall at the time, all my advisors potentially for the college that I wanted to go into, the president. I mean, we met everybody. And it was funny that I was really about to either commit to Tennessee or Auburn. And after that changed everything. I mean, that one visit, I saw what was going to happen, or what had the potential to happen. Obviously it needed to come to fruition, but just something was different. It was special. And they had this guy named Dabo Swinney, who I didn't know if he was going to be there for very long, but I wanted to be a part of what he had going on for that short amount of time. And looking back on all that, it's really funny to see where we were then versus where we are now.
What time of year was that, if you remember?
It was spring. It was spring break. So they were in spring practice. And so we actually got to see that for a couple of days, and hang out and meet the guys. And so it was really, really cool to be a part of that.
Spring of 10.
Yeah. Spring of 9. It was spring of 10. Spring of 10.
So this is after Dabo's first full season, after they got to the ACC championship and lost to Georgia Tech and then lost to Kentucky in the bowl game.
Yep.
Okay, so pre 6 and 7 in 2010. When did you commit?
I had to deal with all that a week later. I drove right back down and committed.
So what were the reactions of the Tennessee and Auburn coaches when Clemson just comes totally off the radar, and you commit to them?
Yeah, I mean, shocked, because I was really, really liking Auburn. And I thought they had a great thing. And then, they go on to win the national championship that year. So they're probably like, man, we don't need this guy anyway. But it was, it was a big shock to them because Clemson wasn't there yet at all. And it was almost laughable that I was going to a program like that instead of, the mighty SEC.
And so I guess the summer of 10 was when they started to make inroads with Sammy.
Yeah, with Sammy, with Martavis, I don't think was committed yet. He might have been. Latique Townsend. I mean, you think of the guys that were in my class. Stephon Anthony.
Stewart.
Tony Stewart. We had Mike Bellamy. We had some dogs, man.
Sharon
class
Peak
was what? Sharon Peak, Adam Humphreys, who was just a 2-star, but man, we had some guys in that class. Cortez Davis, I think, was a 4-star cornerback from Florida. That was and I was one of the earlier guys. I think the only person committed before me was Shaq Anthony. I think it was me and Shaq were the earliest guys.
Wow. So I remember, the 2009 Dandy Dozen class gets a lot of, has gotten a lot of recognition for being Dabo's first class, and they had, a real big leap of faith, like with Taj, as Dabo tells it, Jim Tressel and
right.
Chip Kelly are hanging out outside, and he's had, Dabo had no sales pitch other than the future, other than his vision.
Exactly.
But that 11 class is really interesting because you guys had to stick together through that 6 and 7 season. Were y'all communicating a lot together, like privately, amongst each other before that signing day?
I know I wasn't. I mean, that time, it's so funny to look at how different everything is now. Social media was nothing back then. I mean, guys weren't following each other. We weren't, because it wasn't big. It wasn't a thing yet. I really think 2014 was probably the first time that started happening. But even like texting, I might have had one person's number out of the class before we got onto campus. So it's not even close to like what it is today. So we couldn't comfort each other and say, hey guys, we're going to do this together. We're all going to come here, these 4 and 5 stars that we have and really make a difference. It was all just believing what Coach Swinney was selling. And I think that when you look at that class, I mean, we're I don't want to boast myself and give myself too much credit, but that class really, I think, was what changed the direction of the program.
And you redshirted that year, so you had a lot of time to watch.
I did.
That's Chad Morris's first year too. Can you speak to sort of his part in that transformation, not just the offensive transformation, but sort of the program's self identity, I guess, and just how big a role he played in that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was really a time, and maybe Clemson was a little bit early, where college football was changing. I mean, it was changing to that wide open spread, tempo offense, and Chad was one of the first people able to successfully do it with Tulsa, and then you boost her to a bigger program and get to and win an ACC championship in 2011. So I think that it was revolutionary. I mean, we were running bubble screen, dive, off tackle, every game. In 2010, it seemed like still had some I formation. I mean, we had a fullback, Chad Deal, who's one of my favorite players ever. But that doesn't exist anymore. And it's just, the game's different for Clemson. And I think what he was able to do, not only with the tight end and introducing a 3-back, but really just spreading the offense wide open, really relying on a pass to equal the run, which is a little bit different now. We really hone in on our run game, or Clemson really hones in on their run game to open up the passing game. But it's just his coming to Clemson was instrumental, and again, a huge part of the success that we have here today.
Big supporter of Clemson athletics, and now a loyal supporter of the Clemson Dubcast is Harris Flooring America. Based in Anderson, South Carolina, Harris Flooring has been instrumental in a lot of the facilities transformation you've seen on Clemson's campus lately. From the Allen Reeves Center to the McFadden Building to Memorial Stadium to the Neary Center, Harris Flooring has been at the ground floor, pun intended, of all this. Family owned and operated since 1947. The owner, Scott Junkins, big Clemson guy. He employs Clemson folks. And keep in mind, it's not just commercial. Harris Flooring is just as good inside the home in the residential realm as they are with the larger scale commercial stuff. Floor to ceiling design capabilities. Give them a call, 864-642-6183, or online at flooringamerica-anderson.com. I'm going to totally change course right quick, and then we'll go back. But you just said I have to say something. You just said we did this. Actually, they did that. Are you as
I'm catching myself, man? It's hard.
As I'm guessing that now that you're part of a so-called neutral endeavor, that it's important for you. It's important for you to sort of have that detachment, I guess, at least on the surface.
I guess, man, it'll be a learning curve, and I hope they don't get too mad at me, they being ESPN, or ACC Network, but it's going to happen. It's in my blood, and they know that. That's a part of why I probably was given this opportunity, was just because of my ties with Clemson and what I was able to do with Clemson. It's going to be hard. I don't think I'll be full-blown Charles Barkley, having the tiger and the balloons at my desk, but it's going to be hard differentiating they and we for at least a couple months.
Yeah, I'm guessing they didn't hire you to be the next Paul Feinbaum.
Yeah, I don't think so, but who knows? Maybe so. So I'm sure we'll be going through some training and stuff over the summer, and I'm sure they'll harp on that with me.
All right, so back to 11-12. Do you believe that LSU, the win over LSU in the Chick-fil-A Bowl, was the turning point, the pivotal sort of moment for a program that was ascending to a powerhouse status?
I think definitely. I give that game a ton of credit with most people I talk to. I think that you look at that defense, so what LSU had that year, every single guy, or pretty much close to every single guy, was probably on an NFL team or playing on an NFL team at some point in time. I mean, they were unbelievable. And for Clemson to do what they did with the play calling, just the amount of guts that game took, that 4th and 16 play. I just think about it over and over again. But then also the kick that Catanzaro had to make to win the game. I really think that was kind of a coming out party, a arrival notice, if you will. But then again, really that next year when we had Ohio State in our first BCS win ever in the Orange Bowl, I think that those two were probably the biggest games of Clemson's history so far, other than obviously a national championship and playoff win.
And also beyond that actual game in the Chick-fil-A Bowl, the psyche of the Clemson fan base and the perception of Clemson regionally, nationally, and even the fans was because you had just gotten beat by South Carolina at home. A backup, Dylan Thompson came in for Connor Shaw, who was hurt, and Jadeveon Clowney goes wild. And so the feeling outside the walls of those football offices, that whole month of December was they can't play big boy football. They're going to get crushed by LSU. And then in the opener in 13, they're going to get crushed at home by Georgia. And it's just going to be the same old, same old. I'm wondering, obviously, you guys inside those practice fields and inside those football offices didn't believe that. There was still a belief that you guys could put the pieces back together after that South Carolina game and go toe-to-toe with LSU. Can you tell me, just from what you remember, what it was like on the inside as all that stuff swirled on the outside going into that game?
I think for whatever reason, man, those 5 years we could just not beat South Carolina. I think that it was a psyche thing from some of the players that were there, from the way the games were called. I mean, there was one time, it might have been the year that we're talking about right now, where we were averaging, 8 yards a carry against South Carolina. And then all of a sudden we're calling a trick play and throw an interception when we can march right down the field and score at any time we want. And that totally changed the game. So it was just a weird couple of years that Clemson was unable to beat the Gamecocks. And obviously they had a big part to do with it. That was probably the best they have been ever and ever will be. I mean, the way that they called plays, the amount of talent that they not only had but developed. I'm thinking of guys like Ingram, who is a franchise player for the Bolts out in California. And, oh, by the way, they had Jadeveon Clowney there as well. So I think that those teams, for whatever reason, just had Clemson's number. There was nothing we could do about it. And it was an interesting time period. But those practices that led up to the LSU game were some of the most physical, tough, hard practices that I've ever experienced as a football player. I mean, we knew what it was going to take. We knew what the expectation was, and we essentially beat each other up for a month, and obviously came out victorious. But we were fully prepared for those guys and knew exactly what it was going to take to go against them and to come out with a victory.
And you lose Sammy on the first play.
That kind of changed the morale a little bit, didn't it?
Wow. And then, oh gosh, I can't remember. Was it Isaiah Battle who got thrust into duty in that game? So right tackle got hurt?
Yeah. So I think it was Gift Timothy got hurt. I believe we moved Brandon Thomas to right tackle. Joe Gore went in for a couple of plays. And then Isaiah Battle goes in. And literally, Isaiah was, thank goodness, such a great athlete where he could just run around and block guys. But, I mean, he had no clue what he was doing out there. It's remarkable. If you go back and watch how we were able to win that game, it was a crazy, crazy game. Crazy performance by Taj and Nuke. I mean, they went insane.
Yeah. So
it was a fun game to be a part of.
Another one of those pivotal moments you talk about. 2 years later, in Orlando, Chad Morris has gone to SMU. Deshaun has just had surgery after beating South Carolina on one leg. And you got Cole Stout, who, was vomiting all over himself at the end of that season. Just was throwing pick six left and right against Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
And then didn't look good. I forgot who it was, Middle Tennessee or somebody in the game before South Carolina. Everybody on the outside is saying, okay, Chad's gone, and now you have these two inexperienced coordinators and Jeff Scott and Tony Elliott, and there's no way they can hang with Cole Stout at quarterback. What were those few weeks of bowl practices like preparing for Oklahoma in the Russell Athletic Bowl?
Yeah, I think all that we heard, from everybody outside of the locker room, obviously, was that our offense packed up and went to Dallas. They all went to SMU. There was nothing we could do. Our best player, a freshman, has a torn ACL and isn't playing. We had no chance. I think that was kind of the mantra or how we were going to go about it. And, we all just took that very personally, came together and decided to do something about it. And you see the absolute butt whipping that took place on that field. I think that, unfortunately, that year, I think there was no doubt that Deshaun Watson was Chad Morris's guy. I mean, he'd been recruiting him since Chad got there or since he was in high school. They had a fantastic relationship. They trusted each other. Chad knew what he could call for Deshaun, and it would work. And I think, unfortunately, for Cole Stout, when he was in games, Chad Morris would call plays that worked for Deshaun Watson that didn't necessarily work for Cole Stout. And I think that's why we saw some of the things that we did. And I think that's why we saw Cole have an outstanding performance in the Russell Athletic Bowl. I think he sat down with Jeff and Tony, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I would imagine they sat down together, said, hey, what do you like? What do you want to run? And what do you feel comfortable with? And Cole made those decisions. They made those decisions, and they went out and executed to extremely high level. So I knew from the first play when I saw Artavis Scott look so much faster than everyone else on the field wearing red that it was about to be an absolute beatdown, because he was playing like a man possessed. And I think our guys did a fantastic job on defense of shutting down Trevor. And I think Baker was redshirted, so I think it was just Trevor Knight. But I knew it was going to be a long day as soon as Artavis took off and looked like the Flash out there.
Do you think, looking back, that Tony and Jeff have brought something to the offense that maybe wasn't present when Chad was running the show?
I think that, and I don't know, I would assume it's Tony, because obviously he's a running backs coach, but I can't speak positively about that. But I think Tony's willingness to establish the run game and not give up is the wrong word, but I'll say give up just for lack of a better word, to give up on the run game as quickly. Sometimes I felt like if a run play didn't work or if something didn't work, we would just kind of scrap it and go on to something else with Chad. And I mean, he did an unbelievable job. We averaged 40 points, 400 to 500 yards of offense. And there's no question that he is a offensive genius and guru. But I just feel like now Tony will die before he gives up on a run play or a run play that he knows will work. And that's helped us establish a more balanced offense. I think that Clemson would rather run 30 run plays and 30 pass plays than have 600 yards of offense. However, they have to get it. So I think the amount of balance that they are able to create now has just made them extremely dangerous. And obviously execution is a big part of that as well. But the athletes that they have doing what they're doing on such a high level has really just been scary for people.
You mentioned that going into that Oklahoma game, you guys were determined to prove everybody wrong on the outside. That sort of thing continues to this day, even with Clemson having won 2 national titles in the last 3 years. Dabo always finds a way to create that chip on the shoulder. I mean, I remember after this recent national championship game, they were edgy and sort of defiant in saying that, yeah, everybody was saying we couldn't block those guys, this and that. And then even to this day, Dabo has even more ammunition from the folks saying, oh, Clemson has an easy schedule and Alabama was tired from playing in the brutal SEC. How much a part of the DNA of Dabo's program includes that sort of, oh, really? You think we can't do this?
Yeah, 100%. You know, and I think it's all related because of Dabo Swinney and what he experienced, what he had to go through to get where he is. I mean, at the end of the day, when you strip him down, Dabo Swinney is a walk-on. That's what he is. So he is always, no matter what, going to have a chip on his shoulder, going to try and strive for more than you think he deserves or he should get. And to this day, I mean, he just signed a 10-year, $93 million contract. Yet he's going to have the exact same mindset that he always has and always will have, and that's what keeps him going. I think that's what keeps this program from staying complacent. And we'll see. You know, obviously, with success comes complacency, and guys starting to think that maybe they don't have to work as hard. I hope that Clemson is able to keep that far, far away from their locker room and their beliefs, but I think no doubt, and people just keep giving them ammunition, you know, whether it's like you said, the weak schedule, the other opponent was tired, the other opponent was thinking about something else, whatever they want to say, Dabo's going to take that, flip it, and make it absolute fuel for his Clemson Tiger football team. So it's going to be interesting to see the narrative and how he can continue to flip and create these things for his guys to buy in, because that's where it starts. I mean, if people are just staring at him while he says these crazy things and doesn't believe them, it's not going to work. But he's such a great man at relating to his guys, at getting them to buy in to where, we can play anybody anywhere and they'll be ready.
You know what really blew me away, Eric, is when the recent tombstone was unveiled and it said it was inscribed best ever.
Yeah.
And people flipped out over that, saying that Clemson was Dabo was trolling Alabama. And I'm like, wait a minute. I mean, all through the season, we heard that Alabama might be the best team ever.
Right.
And if they would have won that game by 4 touchdowns and said they were the best ever, everybody would have agreed with them. Now that Clemson is saying they're the best ever, people are like upset about that. I don't understand.
And be as upset as you want, because that's what that 2018 team was. They no doubt had the willpower, the ability on and off the field to just dominate whoever played against them, and there's no doubt in my mind that's one of the, if not the best teams ever. When you see how they totally dominated every single person they played, but yeah, I don't understand why people were so upset about it, and quite honestly, I don't really care.
You were saying earlier when the ESPN guy approached you the day of the game in San Jose that you said, let's go ahead to Bristol now. I already know what's going to happen in this game. Were you were really confident going into the game?
I was. I think that when I saw Alabama versus Georgia and I saw Alabama versus Oklahoma, the blueprint on defense was set. I mean, I saw what those guys were able to do to Tua Tagovailoa in that offense, and I knew that Clemson's defense was, if not double, triple better than any defense they would have gone against that year, just from a personnel. And obviously, I think Venables is the best defensive coordinator in the country. Just what he's able to do with his defensive line and get those guys ready. I knew that they were going to be ready on the defensive side of the ball. And then the performance that Trevor seemingly put together the last 3 weeks of the season, he was just getting better and better. And it seemed like when the stage got brighter, he performed even better. So I think that he was ready to go. I might not have thought that he was going to do what he did. And obviously Justin Ross was a huge part of that. But I was very confident that Clemson was going to win, by 3 touchdowns or more. And it's fun because I'm on the radio and I say these things publicly, so you can go back and check them out.
Did you get that sense too in talking to the coaches going into the game?
I think just overall the confidence that I got from players, from coaches, from support staff, they were ready and they felt very confident in their plan and what they were able to do, not only to Notre Dame, but in preparation for Alabama. I think that they were very confident in their abilities, and obviously we saw that.
I'll never forget, Eric, in January of 2016, locker room in Glendale, after that game, you were still in uniform after playing your last game, losing 45-40. You were able to smile and say, boy, what a great run, and have some satisfaction even so soon after such a disappointing loss. What has it been like for you? Has it been hard at all? Do you think back and say, what if at all? Like, what if this play would have gone that way in that game or anything like that?
I think the only times that I've said what if is when I'm talking with, close friends or different people and just think about the adversity that 2015 went up against in that game. Number one, the best wide receiver in the country in my mind, Mike Williams, breaks his neck before the first game of the season. So we were out one of our best players. Right before the game, we lose our second best at the time, first best when we were going into that game, and a true freshman, Deion Kane. So he can't play in the game. We lose our number one kicker going into the game. Shaq Lawson has, I can't remember if it was a shoulder or an ankle So our best defensive end's hurt and not going to play. And then, oh, by the way, a couple of guys had checked out and thought about the NFL draft and didn't want to give their all. So when you add all those things up and to see what we were still able to do and overcome, it's definitely crossed my mind a couple of times. Man, I would have loved to have been that first team to win the college football playoff, but am over the moon excited for what the Clemson program has been able to do, what these guys have accomplished, and to have just a small part of that, to have been on a team that won an ACC championship or two when I redshirted, to be the first ever college football appearance team, all those different things. So I do not have any quarrel or regret about how things went, and I'm very excited for the direction of this program.
You've mentioned some of the guys had checked out and we're thinking about the NFL. This is not a revelation. I mean, I've written about it before. Other former players have talked about it. When did you notice that this was going on? Was it in the prep for the playoff or prep for the championship game? What do you remember about when it started dawning on you that, oh man, this doesn't look good?
Probably from that perspective of being able to see it. Maybe preparation a little bit in that, because, when you have a month to prepare for one team in Oklahoma, you can kind of see guys starting to slack off a little bit or not go to taking training as seriously. People start whispering in their ears about the NFL or what they can do if they get hurt, what'll happen. So maybe you see it a little bit there, but looking back and just seeing the film, and if you recap the season and you see kind of the effort that was given at this point that no longer was there at this point, it might could go as early as the Georgia Tech game, after Notre Dame, after that victory. If you look closely, you can kind of see some guys doing that, which is a shame and good for them because they're playing on Sundays now. But just the thought of what could we have done if we were all there together sometimes creeps by. And, really big kudos to Ben Boulware, because that very next year, I believe it was before the Ohio State game, he called a team meeting or a defensive meeting. I can't remember what my guys told me, but I mean, he nipped all that in the bud. He said, listen, if you're worried about that, if you're worried about what happens after these two games, just leave. We don't want you here. We don't need you here. And I think that really, it nipped it in the bud, and I don't think Clemson will ever have to deal with that again.
Yeah, Boulware told me that also before that season, I don't know if it was in the spring or in August camp, he pulled everybody together, and he said he got Christian Wilkins to join his cause, and he said, and maybe a couple of other guys, he said, if I see that from any of you guys this year, I will physically whip your ass, and this guy's going to help me.
Good. And, I think it's a learning experience. That was the first time that we had done that, in 2015. So maybe the signs weren't as prevalent until after the fact. But, I got to think that that's something that myself, Ryan Norton, Joe Gore, some of those guys would have done the same thing given the experience of having seen it before we were directly dealing with it. So it's something that sucks that obviously it happened, but again, I wouldn't trade anything in my career for something else. I think it happened the way it was supposed to and the way it should, and it was a heck of a time.
Eric, is there anything we haven't talked about that you want to share, that you want to talk about? Anything that I've missed?
Over the course of 5 years, I think you and I have covered it pretty well. But no, man, this podcast has been super fun. I really appreciate you having me on, and it's been fun to hear some of the different guests that have been on here with you. So I'm excited for you and to see where this thing grows and what it grows into.
Eric, thank you, and congratulations on your new gig. There are a lot of folks around here who are happy for you, proud of you, and can't wait to watch you on the air.
I appreciate you, man. I'm excited to keep it going and to represent the Clemson family on a new pedestal. I won't be able to say we all the time, but just know, I'm a Tiger always. And, I'll call it like I see it, but this is where I was raised, and this is what helped create what you see today. So always grateful for the Clemson family.
Thank you so much, Eric.
Appreciate you, brother.
All right. Thanks to Eric Mac Lain for joining us. Man, it's going to be really cool watching the evolution of his broadcasting career, starting this season with the advent of the ACC Network. Thanks to Eric for joining us. Thanks to our very generous and supportive and loyal sponsors, starting with Parham Smith and Archenhold Law Firm, our title sponsor. Also, Tandem Payment in Greenville, Harris Flooring America in Anderson. Last but definitely not least, our friends Gary Cohen and company over at the Abernathy Boutique Hotel. We'll be back next week, and like I said earlier, hoping to get 2 in next week, 2 editions to make up for the absence of one last week. So stay tuned for that. Everyone have a wonderful rest of the week and weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. Cheers.